Hey there, welcome to New Start Discipleship. We're on day 35. We're making progress, right? Carry on. I'm proud of you for keeping going this far. In 2 Samuel chapter 5 and then 7 through 9 and 11 and 12, we have some kind of selected stories from the kingship, the rule of David. David, you've probably heard of David and Goliath. Maybe you've read that. And we see that we kind of skip over that story and get directly into his kingship, into his reign. But it took years for David to become king after his time where he served under Saul and killed the giant named Goliath. So these stories is like in chapter 5 is where David becomes king over the nation of Israel after the death of Saul and kind of the fallout from that with his successor, Saul's son, who reigned and things like that. So David becomes king and becomes king over a united Israel, united kingdom. And as David is doing that, there's some beautiful, beautiful things like God made a promise to David. And this is very important. He made a covenant. Remember the story of Abraham and the covenant that God made with Abraham? So God made a covenant with Abraham that through him he was going to bless all the nations of the world. And he was going to do this, make him a father of many people. And he has done that. So we are spiritually we're part of the people of God, the outflow of Abraham by faith. And so now God's going to make a covenant with David. And that's a very important moment here as he makes what the theologians call the Davidic covenant, the covenant with David. And so when he makes this covenant, he makes some promises to David. Specifically, he says that I am going to establish in 2 Samuel 7, starting with verse number 11, he says, I am going to establish a house for you, and I will raise up offspring to succeed you, and then I'm going to raise up ones. And he says, your house, verse 16, your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me, and your throne will be established forever. So he promised David that there will be that he will never take his love away from him because of David's passion for God and his heart to know God and be like God and do God's will. He says, I promise that I'm going to make forever, I'm going to make your kingdom last forever, which is really pretty amazing. And David responds in prayer and worship. It tells some stories about David's victories. And then in chapter 11 and 12, we get to a very sad story in David's life, and that is his sin and fall, his fall into sin with Bathsheba. And so with this woman, he's not really in a place he should be. He should have been out fighting with his men, but instead he was staying behind and kind of living the life of luxury. And he looks down, sees a woman from the top of the castle, sees a woman, and his heart is filled with lust after her, and he goes after her and brings her to the castle and commits adultery with her. And so a very, very sad and broken chapter in David's life. Now, several things I want to draw out of this. If you want to supplement your reading, you're going to read in chapter 12 of your reading today how Nathan, the prophet, was sent to David to rebuke him, and David was broken and sorry. And if you want to supplement your reading, you can read a psalm that David wrote during that time, and that is in Psalm 51. So he wrote a prayer, a song of repentance and brokenness for what he had done. And David recognized in that, he recognized that the sin that he had committed flowed out of a heart that was sinful from even before he was born, which is an amazing idea, that the seeds of all sin are sowed in our hearts from the first moment. I will tell you 2 or 3 things. 1, God made a promise to David. 2, David failed and messed up and really, really rubbed his nose in the dirt. He really did. But the next thing I want you to notice is that God forgave David, and even though there were difficulties and challenges in his life, God forgave David and kept his promises to David. So he had promised that he would let David's descendant rule on the throne forever, and he did. His name is Jesus. And so I'm excited about that. All right, that's where we're going to get to the New Testament. He's the king like David. He's the prophet like Moses. He's the king like David. And so let's carry on, and we'll see you tomorrow.